Hey, this is Hank Hill, and you're listening to my favorite podcast, Mouse and Weens.
Mouse and Weens and a 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 mouse and Weens, mouse and Weens and a mouse and Weens, mouse and Weens.
Aha!
Hello! Welcome to Mouse and Weens.
To Mouse and Weens. I'm Mouse. I'm Joelle. I'm the mom one.
And I am Weens. I am the single Julianne one up in LA.
That's right. And we are going to hear part 2 of our interview with W. Earl Brown.
It's amazing. Check out the first interview, and this will be the second half of that.
That's right. We have learned all about him being an actor in Something About Mary. We learned about him in Scream. We heard about him in Deadwood. We're going to continue the talk about Deadwood and then move on into his project, his movie called Bloodworth, which stars Kris Kristofferson, Val Kilmer. Who else
and
is in
he
it?
wrote and produced it. It was an amazing accomplishment. And Dwight Yoakam was in it, and Hilary Duff. And then also we're going to hear about his project right now. You can go and see it on YouTube called Dad Band. And there's a member of Alice in Chains in there too. So it's a really cool,
That's right.
fun.
And we're going to hear about his own band called Sacred Cowboys and hear about all his adventures. So let's just get right into it. Here is W. Earl Brown.
I would not take anything for those 4 years spent, or 3 seasons, but 4 years total that we were creating that story.
So why did they cancel it? I had read something about you going to a party and meeting with one of the execs who said that was a huge mistake, right? It was a huge mistake.
Yeah, he said that in the book. He didn't say it to me at that party.
Okay.
The guy that ran the network, he was a comedy guy. He was never, drama wasn't his thing, and we were developed under the regime before him. So we were never a favored son, Deadwood meaning the show. And they were expecting us to become Sopranos. And the irony is we were on track to become Sopranos because they didn't become the water cooler show till their 3rd season. So we had all of that momentum building up. And looking back, there was writing on the wall I just didn't recognize. Chris bumped us from our premiere date in March. He bumped us, and that happened in November. And that took us out of Emmy contention because we weren't on air in time. So all of that shit's momentum.
Yeah.
You know, all of that, the awards and all that stuff, one thing feeds the other, and it's a snowball. And so, Chris, it wasn't until, you know, the fact that I don't know where you stumbled on, I guess I have told that story about walking into the Emmy party or the Oscar party, and first fucking person I run into was him. Because I blamed him for what happened. And that was only a year after the show had been unceremoniously killed off. There was a book called Difficult Men, which was about the second golden age of television, and about David Milch and David Chase and all those great shows, Breaking Bad and Sopranos and The Wire, David Simon. And there's a whole chapter devoted to Deadwood and Milch. And in it, Chris says, you know, he said that was my mistake. That was my biggest mistake. And he explained himself more. And again, he said it was a negotiating ploy. I needed to cut down the costs. I needed to get the production reined in under control. And we were out of control expensive. They still made money. That's the thing. They were still making money.
Yeah.
But a lot of backstage politics. Paramount had a housekeeping deal with David, so they own the rights outside of North America, but they weren't putting in any production funds, no overages or anything. So that was a bee in the bonnet or a burr under the saddle.
Yeah.
And there was a myriad of things went into him making that. And again, he said it was my beginning of a negotiation, and then David just went off the rails and called everybody and said the show was canceled. So yeah, I guess there's blame all around, but
Where was the money? Because every costume, every background person had on beautiful outfits. Where was the majority of the money? Was it mostly shot at Melody Ranch?
Yeah, we were
on
all
location.
We hardly ever left. We left when the very beginning when I throw Brom Garrett off the mountain. I throw him off the mountain at Angel's Crest, and I crack his skull in Pine Mountain. We were 2 different locations. Or vice versa, I'm sorry. Threw him off of Pine Mountain, cracked his skull there. We had the gold mine set and the cemetery set were off. They were up at Pine Mountain. Otherwise,
Did you know Brian Haynes pretty well too, the location manager on that?
oh yeah, I remember him. Yes.
Yeah, I worked with him a few times. He recently passed from cancer too, a couple years ago. But
Oh,
he
I
was on the whole show too, and he said it was the best job he's ever had in his life, and he's a veteran.
Every single person involved felt that.
Yeah.
And that's why having the movie, being able to have a final chapter to somewhat on our own terms, to be able to say hello and goodbye to those people that you shared such an intimate part of your life with and you're forever bonded to. Seeing Dave's decline, I had not seen him in person in been about a year and a half before we started production. And he knew then, he was diagnosed then when I had lunch with him, and he was having real memory problems. But the physical depletion was difficult. But it was a blessing to be able to say hello and goodbye, because I couldn't let it go before. I could not come to terms with the way things happened. You know, to give so much of yourself, and I'm not the Lone Ranger in that. Everybody did, and everybody felt that way. And for us to get cut off at the knees, as I said earlier, for it to stop. It didn't end, it stopped. So it was a blessing to make that movie.
Yay!
Even though all my shit got cut out of it.
No. Who did that? Oh.
There, a lot of stuff got cut out. But
thank God they did the movie, though. That gives people some peace and some closure.
Well, there's a great lyric by Ray Wiley Hubbard that I try to live my life by. And it sounds so simple, and I'd never heard it phrased that way till I heard Ray sing it in the song Mother Blues. Every day that my gratitude is higher than my expectation, I have a good day. So
I love that.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I haven't heard that, but it does feel like that is the counter to, I think it was also like a famous quote of man's greatest downfall is his expectation. It was like Kierkegaard or something, and it's true. And if you just kind of put that gratitude in the beginning of the day.
That's good.
Okay, now, couple of questions for the people that would kill me. All of the fans that wrote in about Deadwood first of all, what is the goo or gel that you smear all over yourself?
That was my question.
That was
so what
hers.
was the fight scene and the goo and the gel? Season.
Bear grease. We went out and killed a bear, boiled off the fat. We was all thick.
So wait, is that so the punches slip off you? Is this like the boxers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, boxers use Vaseline. That's why you stick Vaseline them in the corners so the glove won't grab skin. Because see, that's how your skin gets torn. When you get punched, the skin tears. Right. But so they would grease up in a big fight like that. What it actually was KY jelly, and I forget what else he put in, like bits and pieces of stuff to look like fat, but it's primarily jelly.
And you got down with that KY jelly too. You went there with it also, huh?
All of it. I was well greased.
Because you don't know where they're going to grab. That was good. And I thought you were going to come out with your haircut after he made that comment, like, oh, you are at a disadvantage with that hair, but they kept your hair. I was glad.
Well, there's one that second scene, and this is an example of talking to David. And it's the only example where David did not he let the image overrule the written word. The scene afterwards with Johnny Burns after that fight was a scene. It was written. It was like 3 pages between me and Johnny, where I don't want to leave the room. I don't want to see Al, and he's trying to convince me. And I said, David, I think it would be stronger if I don't say anything. And if I'm naked, like if you just see the damage of his body, you see the cuts and the scrapes and the bruising that's starting, and he can't speak. I think that would be more powerful. And that was when Dave says, let me think about that. And then he came back with half hour later, he had rewritten it. Because we were starting to, I want to say that was written the day of, because I remember, not that I clamor to be naked, nor is anyone clamoring to see me naked.
It was powerful, though.
Yeah, no, it's just an incredibly powerful image. because he's there by that lamplight in a dark room. And this guy who you've just seen, pull the eyeball out of another human being and then crack his skull open, kill somebody with his bare hands. And then that's what led Dave. I can't remember if it was written, a rough draft before, but that whole speech that Al has, that's what happens when you kill a man, up close and you see the light go out of their eyes. I can't even give it justice to try to quote it, but yeah, that's what it was. It took so much out of Dan, and it was also the time the closest he'd ever gotten to dying, because he was one breath away from death, and through a mere twist of fate, he found an eyeball.
Yeah,
and that comes from a true story. I don't know if you want to hear that. Well, people about the fight. All right.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Well, I had written in season 2, my grandfather, my mother's dad, would not allow anybody to call him son of a bitch. Because don't you allow that, because that's defaming my mama. And nobody defamed my mama. This was a man who was very violent. And I told my mother what he had said. This was back when he was still alive. And mother, she goes, well, that was ironic. Because if there was ever a bitch that walked the planet, it was my grandmother. That woman was evil. Which went a long way to explaining why my grandfather was the way he was. But my mother's first husband had abandoned he got my mother pregnant. She had a child at 16 years old, my sister, and he was 27, and he abandoned them. My mother went back to high school. She was her class salutatorian, and as a single mother, she had tried to go to college. She wanted to, but she couldn't. It's a long story. My mother made a great success of her life, and she did it herself. So you can say I'm drawn to strong women, and Freud can work on that one. But her first husband, he had abandoned my sister. They were living back home with my grandparents. My uncle, who was 9 years old, witnessed it. They were at the local filling station, and her ex-husband pulled up, and he's getting beer to ice down ice down his beer, out driving around drinking. And my grandfather said, Loman, we need to talk. They go around back. He says, you got a daughter. You don't want to be a daddy. That's obvious, but there's diapers, there's food. You're going to pay for that. Turns to walk away, and Loman says, yeah, you better walk away, you son of a bitch. My uncle said, he goes, Daddy turned, and he always taught me how to hit because he was a big man. And he said he hit Loman so hard, Loman's eyeball popped out. He goes, Loman fell to his knees, and he goes, his eyeball is literally dangling on his cheek. And he said, and he fell over on his side. He was by a coal pile. And he said, first of all, Granddaddy starts stomping him with his boots. And then he grabs a chunk of coal, and he's about to crack his head open. My grandfather, I saw it. I witnessed it 3 times in my life. And I don't doubt his pupils would dilate. His eyes would go black. And that's when I say that scene that was so fucking felt that, I'm sure some of that blackness had seeped through my genes. His pupils would dilate. And Gerald said, I saw his eyes and I knew he was going to kill him. And he 9 years old, he goes, I go running up. He's got the chunk of coal above his head. He's about to brain him. And he said, I grab him by the chest and I'm pleading with him, Daddy, stop, Daddy, stop. So I wrote that and called it Son of a Bitch, that Soapy the soap seller, bar soap, $5 inside, bar soap, that he's pulling the scam inside the Gem Saloon. And I toss him and he calls me a son of a bitch. And I wrote exactly what happened in my family. Well, we never used it. Wow. And I had called it story segment, Son of a Bitch. So when it rolls around to the fight in season 3, David had brought us together, me, Al Graff, who played captain, Mike Watson, the stunt coordinator, and Dan Minahan, the director. And he said, because it's just written, it says Dan and captain fight to the death. At the last minute, when you think Dan's going to die, he's victorious. That's all it said. And he said, you have 3 days to make up a fight. He said, I have 3 rules. Number 1, I want everything realistic. I don't want any big cowboy roundhouses flying through plate glass, none of that bullshit. Number 2, I want I don't want the audience to be able to draw their breath. Every time they think it's going to ebb, I want it to escalate. I want 5 minutes of increasing tension and violence. And number 3, I want something I ain't ever seen before. So you guys make it up. So we had 3 days to rehearse, create it, and we had 2 days to shoot it. So David would come in at the end of every day and watch what we had done. And we tried a bunch of different things. And Dan Minahan was the one, he said, I want to use the meat market. We've never been in it. And you guys in amongst the raw meat and blood is a great image. And I had suggested the drowning in horse piss. I said, these are like 2 cavemen, beating themselves. And he's trying to drown me in this mud and piss. And so we tried this, tried that. So David, at the end of the second day, we don't have an ending yet. We've marked through everything that we've done. And Dave said, I don't know how the fuck we're going to get out of this. He goes, I went back to that son of a bitch thing that you wrote. And I was thinking but that's, he's killing you. He's overpowering you. There was I will not use the name, but he was an advisor on the show who used to be an enforcer in Vegas. And his thing was to take people's eyeballs out. He would hold them down. He was a huge man. He'd use his thumb, put it by the bridge of their nose, and pop an eyeball. So Milch says, he said, I looked at your son of a bitch thing, and then, what's his name? He said, I was thinking about, with him, but that's not going to work either because of, you're dying. You're being overpowered. I don't know how we're going to get out of this fucking thing. So I played poker with Jerry Cantrell, the musician, Alice in Chains, the hard rock band. Well, Jerry's one of my close friends. And I play cards at his house, and he was big into Deadwood. That's how we met. He was a Deadwood freak. I was an Alice freak.
And you guys did Dad Rock together too? Dad Band, yes.
Yeah. But it was at his house playing poker. I told him about what we were doing, and I told him about son of a bitch. I told him, and he goes, that happened to my brother Dave. I said, what? He goes, Dave was in a biker bar in Oklahoma. He got in a fight. And he goes, this guy had him on the pool table. He had him by the ears. And he was astraddle of him on the table. And he's cracking his head against the slate, the edge of the pool table. And he said, Dave thought he was going to die. He goes, he was getting tunnel vision, like the lights are going out. And he said he was just trying to push the guy off of him. And he felt his ring finger. He couldn't see it, but he felt his ring finger hit something soft and squishy. And he knew it's an eyeball. And he jammed his finger into this guy's skull and pulled his eye out and saved his life. So I go to work the next day, and I go, David, I got an ending. So I lay out the David Cantrell, Oklahoma biker story. That works. Hey, effects, can we get a dangling eyeball? Yeah. Okay, yeah, make an eyeball. It's dangling. So we're leading up to shooting it. And Al Graff, who was playing the captain, who played in the NFL, who was a tough sumbitch. Our other guy, the other advisor, was there that day, the enforcer. And Graff says, what would happen? Like if the eyeball's out? I said, well, the capillaries would all burst. Your good eye would probably be flooded with blood. If your optic nerve's still there, the eye bouncing could probably still see.
Oh
and well, I see the advisor down the way. I went, I'll get an answer. So I go jogging down there and I go, I got a question. What happens when somebody loses their eyeball? And this old man, he's leaned up against the post. And I ask him, and he goes, they scream.
Oh.
They scream a lot.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. I felt that chill down my spine of like, oh shit.
And down your optic nerve?
This is not pretend. This is a guy who has literally held people down and taken eyeballs out of their skull. He's probably dug holes in the desert. Oh shit, this ain't pretend.
Yeah.
So I go back down and Graff goes, what did he say? So just scream a lot. Just scream.
And that's what was in the scene is him just screaming over and over again.
Yeah.
It's chilling.
That scene is, the ebbs and flows were there. I mean, when you're face down in that puddle, I'm like, this is it. My heart is beating, edge of your seat. If anyone hasn't said season 2,
season 3, episode 5.
Okay.
Yeah. You notice the coup de grace is not shown. It's off screen. You hear me split his skull open. You hear the watermelons crack open, but you don't see it.
I'm very
See,
glad you didn't show that. Whoever decided that, it was too much at that point.
Well, David wanted to see the impact on its Swearingen and Hearst. He wanted to see it on them, and I saw that. Now that's funny. I had my ultimate. The first time I saw that, Dusty and Billy of ZZ Top, I invited them. They were heroes. I still have one of my posters from 1970s of those guys. They were one of my favorite bands, and I got to know them. And so I invited Dusty, was huge into Deadwood, so they're going to come out and play cowboy with us. They're going to be Hawkeye's Guns. Their first day on set, Milch kind of knew who they were. You know, he's not a music fan, but he knew, and everybody's like, oh my God, ZZ Top's going to be here. Well, David, I introduced him, and he goes, I have something to show you fellas. Earl, you're going to want to see this. Come to me. And it was in the editing room, and it was the first edit of that fight. So I not only got to create that, I got to watch it with my rock and roll heroes, you know, in the editing room. So
you have arrived when that kind of stuff happens. You're
right?
like, you know, if I die today.
That's
Pinch me.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's okay. So I'm going to segue into another question from Phil Rude, who's a super fan. The character of Dan in Deadwood could have easily been made an anonymous goon, but you managed to really make him memorable and a kind of complicated character who's a mix of charismatic and dangerous and a fully realized person. How much of the character was developed by you as opposed to being on the page?
Well, when it first came about, I was sent the script, and Dority, there's only 3 or 4 lines in the pilot. And I said, it's the thug in the shadows. I had committed to doing Steve Earle's play in Nashville. He'd written a play, a theater play. And I had committed to being in it. And this rolled around, and I read it, and I said to my agent, I said, you know, I don't want to be the thug in the shadows for 7 years. I said, Jack McCall, that's kind of showy. Because it's only 4 episodes, and he gets killed. I said, I don't give a shit. I'd rather play that than be stuck as the thug. So I go, and I knew the casting directors. I'd worked with them before. And Libby comes out, and she goes, you got Dority. I said, yeah, but I want to read McCall. She goes, okay. Do you have both of them? Can we do both of them? I said, yeah, we can do both of them. So I go in, we do McCall, and Dave kind of looks at her. Walter Hill was there at that point. He was still involved. And she goes, oh, no, we're doing Dority. We're doing Dority also. So we do the Dority scene, and I can see Dave kind of perk up on the couch. So we get through it, and he leans forward and goes, all right, we're going to do this again. Now, I want you to think about this. And he goes through every single word. There's a specific reason why I said everything I said it. There's a specific reason why it's phrased that way. There's subtext as he's explaining all of this. It hits me like, oh my God, this guy doesn't write thugs and shadows. This guy brings complexity to everything. Now, I had guest starred on NYPD Blue, so I'd already had just a little snippet of the craziness of Milch. But it was there in the room where I got excited of like, oh my God, this. So David took who, as I said, he could see through you. So I think a big part of Dority was me, but filtered through Dave, you know. So it was a creation of both of us, as all those characters were. Right. Because again, David was able to use who you are as a person. He could see the shadows and he could see the light, and he was able to paint with both of them.
Wow, that's right. So I'm sure he gave you more lines and more as he, yeah.
There were things would happen. There was a personal issue that another actor was having that I was privy to, and no one else was. And there was frustration due to and I just pulled Dave aside and I said, hey, I didn't give away any secrets, but that was the point. This was in the first season. That's the point Dority became so loyal. So it was literally just me taking up for a fellow castmate, trying to go, you need to cut this guy some slack. And so David kind of enveloped that into Dan going on down the line, you know? So yeah, he EB sweaty palms. That's all Billy Sanderson, because Billy would get nervous and his palms would start to sweat.
Wow. How was it with Ian McShane? Did you end up becoming protective of him as a person, or what was your guys' dynamic?
Just pretty much ended up resulting like it was on the show.
Wow.
Hang on just a second. I'm asking my daughter to bring water out.
Oh, yeah. Do we need to, because this recording's a 2-hour.
Yeah, I'll look at that too. Make sure my plug doesn't come out.
Okay. Yeah, Ian and I, we kept up. We would have about twice a year, we would have breakfast over near his place. He lives in Venice Beach, lives there in London. But we would have our Deadwood breakfasts, for which he would invite, and I was inevitably there as part of every one of them. Yeah, our relationship really kind of unfolded like Al and Dan's.
That's amazing. And he was sober, right? Because I read that, isn't he and Milch both? And there was so much booze in all the scenes. I just wonder if anyone had...
Ironically, Ian knew Lemmy Kilmister from London because they used to drink at the same pub.
Oh, funny.
Ian got sober back in the 80s and had been sober, is sober ever since. But yes. And David, I think David got sober before Deadwood. You know, he got off the drugs, but he said, I was going to, said I'm going to exercise. That was good. Doctor said I need good exercise. He said I started running, and that fucking hurts when you're old. And you know what takes away the hurt? Vicodin. And you know what washes Vicodin down really good? Vodka. They go good together. So David was then hooked on Vicodin, and so I think before Deadwood, David was off illicit substances, shall we say?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about David's sobriety. I don't know if he was ever part of,
program or something
of the Anonymous or not. I know Ian, but yeah.
Yeah. I just wondered because watching the show, it's just so you guys are drinking all the time.
Well, their water was bad, so they couldn't really trust water. Wow. So yeah, that was a reason. That was another reason they drank so much alcohol, is because unless you had a fresh spring, and you get a bunch of people living together like that, you got a lot of sewage in your creek.
Right. Oh my gosh. There's things you think about. I read a little bit, on Wikipedia just about the town itself, and the history of that place is incredible. And did you do a lot of research before, like, of the town? And
Yes, I went there. I went several times, but I went there before we ever started. Actually, it may have been at the end of my first year. John Hawkes had gone before we started production. And then after our first year, I went. There's a great museum there, the Adams House Museum, which David had used, with his initial research. And I went and spent a lot of time there. Jerry Bryant is local historian who's passed away. He gave, he knew every story. And he took me in his golf cart to all these places up in the hills where stuff happened. Yeah. And I love visiting there. I love going that place.
Wow. Well, you're a country boy at heart too, right? Would you say? Yeah.
That's cool. Were the scenes crazy? I mean, shooting at night, all that mud, was it just dirty and icky all the time?
It was. My wife has said this too. She says people going to a night shoot there was almost like stepping back in time, because, the lights, you can't see the hillside and the homes that were there. Because it's in a residential area. It's a 10-acre lot, and it's been developed, the rest of the valley. So you're driving through, suburbia, big houses and horses, and then you're at Melody Ranch. But at nighttime, when we just had, our little segment lit, it was a magical time. It was a magical experience.
That's cool. And crazy hours? Were you there around the clock? Or yeah, I could imagine.
Did you just sleep there a lot? I would think so.
I never spent the night there. It was, for me, driving home is about a 20-minute drive.
Yeah.
So there were some people that did, who lived like on the west side or something, but I just drive home.
I worked on the Westward World pilot, and we were right by the set there, and they used some of the set, and all anybody talked about was Deadwood at Melody Ranch the whole time.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Austin Rude.
And I'm Phil Rude, and we host The Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rude.
Clever name. Each week, we watch a movie and bring our discussion to the mics.
You can hear my opinions and Austin's wrong opinions about everything we watch.
No, you're the wrong one.
Get out.
The Picture Show with Austin and Phil Root. Download it wherever you get your podcasts.
Hawaiian Cowboy.
Oh, yeah. I heard your story on another recording of sitting down with all the musicians that you brought onto Deadwood, because you're that guy, right? All connected. And that they played the Hawaiian Cowboy song. One of the co-actors of yours, right? Keone?
Keone. Yes.
Yeah.
Keone grew up in Hawaii.
Okay.
His family is Japanese ancestry, but his grandparents, I think, came to Hawaii.
Okay.
And he grew up in Hawaii. And it was when Jason Isbell came out on the movie, and we were sitting there playing, and I think we just played Long Black Veil, which is a 3/4. And Keone goes, play the same chord, same repetition, and then keep playing. And then he starts singing Hawaii Cowboy. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I looked it up. I was like, what is the song Hawaiian Cowboy? I'm not a country fan necessarily, but I'm like, I need to kind of know what he's talking about. So I looked it up. It turns out that was my first boyfriend. That's his grandfather wrote that song, Saul K. Bright, in Hawaii. Yeah. And he used to talk about him all the time. Oh yeah, Saul Bright, Saul K. Bright. I'm like, who's this guy, Saul K. Bright? And there you go. That's the connection. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Brought back a lot of memories for you.
I guess, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now can I talk about Bloodworth? How do you, we watched it. It's amazing. It seemed like it was hard. Do you want to talk about kind of the inception of the idea and how do you get funding to do it?
Yeah, well, we were doing Deadwood. My wife had interviewed William Gay for a project she was working on. And that's how I first got to know William.
And he's the author of the book?
Yeah, he wrote the book, Provinces of Night. And I said that was my Catcher in the Rye. When I read Catcher in the Rye, I was 20. I wasn't a teenager anymore. But Holden Caulfield just seemed like an asshole to me. I didn't. Yeah, he was just
a lot of serial killers thought so too, who ended up following him.
Yeah. And when I read Provinces of Night, like, oh my God, I found my Holden Caulfield. It's Fleming Bloodworth. The kid that's the main character in that book, which is really a loosely autobiographical story of William himself. So Shane Taylor, I had seen his first movie. He's from Kentucky, and I had met him. Super nice guy. Worked for ESPN for years. He'd always wanted to be a film director, and he'd made a little homemade movie. And I really liked him, and I kept putting it off. It's shot in my hometown in Murray, Kentucky.
Oh.
Because it's set in the illegal cockfighting world. And there was a huge cockfighting arena, illegal as hell. But there was a breeding farm and an arena that was in my county. He found it and got access to it, hence they shot there.
Oh.
And people at home said, hey, man, they shot a movie here last summer. I'm like, oh, no, they shot a movie. There's people here from Hollywood. They shot a movie here. I never heard of it. So I ended up meeting Shane, super nice guy. And he was inviting me to watch the movie. And I kept putting it off because I'm like, it's going to suck. He's only got 3 professional actors. It's mostly local people. Long story short, I couldn't avoid it. I finally saw it. It was phenomenal for a little no-budget film. So I approached him. I said, hey, man, I love this book. Take a look at – so he was still working for ESPN there, and he was flying to New York. And he had read about half of it by the time he landed. He called me as soon as they landed. He goes, we've got to get the rights. I want to do this. So it took us that would have been 2003. We were set up to go in 2006. We'd gotten funding. And we were in pre-production. In a 12-hour span of time, Deadwood was canceled, and we lost the money of the film. So I go in 12 hours from I'm a writer, supporting actor on Best Show on Television. I've got my first movie in pre-production at a $5 million budget. I'm riding high. 12 hours later, nothing. So we had to recoup. It took us 3 more years to kind of get all the horses back in the barn. We had a third partner who, let's put it delicately and say he was a lot of big talk. He was all hat, no cattle. And we got a really bad feeling. We parted companies with him we had to come up with long and sordid story. I got far more involved in financing than I ever thought I wanted to be. I had to work for $1. I had to work for nothing. I had to reinvest all the monies. We were paying ourselves union minimums, and paying ourselves $1 as producers. We were forced by our major investor to reinvest all funds. So I worked for 14 months for nothing.
Wow.
But we got to make the film that we wanted to make. We sold it. We got distribution on it. I've told Shane, we discussed this several times. If I had, because that was tough, man, because I was broke. And at the end of the shoot, I got walking pneumonia from so much fucking worry, and I wasn't sleeping. And then that role was screwed with my head anyway. And I didn't write that to be me. I offered it to John C. Reilly. I went to school with John.
Wow.
And I offered Reilly because I knew we had Kristofferson, and I knew Reilly was a big music nut. So Reilly at the last minute turned it down. So I was kind of the guy on the bench. I told Shane, I'll play whatever if we have to, you know. But having Val Kilmer on board justified our budget. So
can you talk? So I don't. For the people who've not heard about this movie, it's called Bloodworth, and your main actors, you were one of them. You had Val Kilmer, Kris Kristofferson,
Dwight Yoakam,
Hilary
Francis
Duff,
Conroy, and Hilary Duff, and Reece Thompson,
And also the woman from 6 Feet Under. I can't recall her name.
Francis Conroy,
Okay, yeah, she was great.
who is phenomenal, and
So
she is
good.
a phenomenal human being.
This movie was amazing. Can you give us just a little premise of it?
And it's the story of this teenager from a very poor rural Appalachian area, whose father has abandoned. His mother left him, and then his father's left, and it's family dysfunction. His father and his two uncles have been screwed up their entire lives because their dad abandoned them when they were little boys. So they grew up without a father, none of them knowing how to be a father. And ironically, you know, Dwight Yoakam's character has this grandson. So the grandfather shows back up in their lives. That's Kris Kristofferson. What it is he's dying, and he has to come to terms with his life. Now, there's a great dark secret in his past that I had to change somewhat from the book, because the book was a definite period piece in the 1940s. And it was an attempted murder of a law officer, but he got away with it, and he ran away. And I'm thinking, because we wanted a timeless feeling, but it's still somewhat contemporary. So I thought there's no way he's going to get away with it unless he murdered the guy. If he killed him and did away with the body, and nobody ever found the body, and it was a cop that deserved killing, that everybody hated, so that I changed that element. So that was it. He had committed this murder, and he told himself, I'm leaving my family behind because the wrath of the devil's coming down on us, and I'm protecting them.
Right.
But as the one son said to him, yeah, you left us standing on that porch, but you took your goddamn guitar.
Yeah.
So he spent his life going around chasing a song, staying drunk, chasing women, playing music.
Wow.
And so he's faced with his own death, and he shows back up. So this grandson has this grandfather suddenly back in his life that he's never known. And he's never had a real father figure, and suddenly he has one. And then tragedy ensues because the sons all hate their father. And it just leads to a denouement that's a great tragedy. But it's actually uplifting if you get to the end with, you know, the lessons that the kid learned.
It was great. It had just the right amount of mystery and violence and sex and family and romance too. It was great. I liked it.
And it's like in the part, which I want to tie back to you, you know, we've all got father issues, or most of us, or a lot of us, and they all did in your move. But did you pull from your own story, or your character was probably the hardest to play, I would imagine. You were angry.
There was a great line in the novel that described that character to a T. I couldn't really use it in the script. There was no place. It was so poetic, it wouldn't have felt right tripping off the tongue of one of the characters. But William wrote, childhood polio left him with a gnarled left leg, but further twisted in ways invisible to the human eye. Childhood polio had left him with a gnarled left leg, but further twisted in ways not visible to the human eye. So that was it. So he had created his own belief system of fundamentalist religion and voodoo, and he thought he controlled. He was insane. Mm-hmm. And there were snippets of that. I forget. We did a re-edit on it. And I think you do briefly get this of him sitting there at the grave of his father, where he's just completely lost sense of reality. But yeah, he was on the slippery edge, and he was a mean fucker too.
Yeah, but then almost righteous because he was left to take care of his mom. So he had that side of him too.
Yeah. But that sense of the chip on his shoulder, because his grandson, his nephew, gets published. That he wants to be a writer. He knows writing is the only way he can deal with this. All of these ghosts that are in his head and around him, if he can write about them, if he can get them on a page, that controls them. And Brady, the character I played, was threatened by that, and he was somebody, because he holds up that magazine when he finds out the magazine the kid's been published in Young Voices of the South. This you? And the kid's proud, and then he rips the magazine up right in front of him. So it's that, there was this getting above my raisins, was the mentality of folks back home, getting above your raising, thinking you're better than where you came from. Mm-hmm. And, my dad and I did not have that kind of a contentious relationship. It was a complicated relationship, but it wasn't like that. I think I mostly drew on my grandfather, the eyeball story, him and my uncle's relationship, because that's exactly what it was. They were so much alike. I witnessed them try to beat each other to death once as a kid.
That stays with you.
A lot of violence. Yeah.
Wow. Did they support you, your family, as an actor, or how did they feel about that?
Yeah. It was my grandfather he was still alive when I got accepted into the graduate program at theater school. And I decided I'm moving to Chicago. I'm going to pursue this. At first, because getting in was a big deal, because there were hundreds of people that auditioned and only a handful got in. But then my old man was like, oh, hell, you're going to be going to college till you're 40. You're going to be one of them, And so it wasn't all about it. And I had driven the summer of 1985, the summer before, I had driven for 6 weeks, I drove to Chicago every weekend to take classes at the Second City with Don DePolo. That was an 840-mile trip every weekend. That's how committed I was. I meant it. But it was my grandfather who had buried my grandmother and was just waiting around to dig his own hole. I mean, literally, he said, we should have dug 2 holes, son. But he was sitting there in the farmhouse. And I went over and I told him, I said, I'm going to do this. I said, don't you have 2 cents to put in like everybody does? And he said, well, ever since you was a little bitty boy, everything you said that you was going to do, you did it. So I ain't got no doubt you'll do this too. So that was kind of the final blessing. Like that was the final string to cut, that, all right, I can let this go and move forward. And then he died. He died that January.
Wow.
So yeah, so I drew on that completely, because him and my uncle were too much alike.
Wow.
And you were the boy that broke the curse a little bit. You got out of there. And
I was Flint.
Yeah, you were.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
You connected. You were the kid that did what you said you were going to do.
I love that.
That's cool.
And my uncle was, quite a bit of him was the Val Kilmer character in that movie.
Wow.
He didn't impregnate my teenage girlfriend.
Well, I was going to say, I hope that twist wasn't true. That was crazy.
By the way, Val Kilmer, how is it? I've hung out with him a couple times and worked with him, and interesting guy, right?
That's a nice way of putting it. Yes, he is interesting.
We don't have to go further than that unless you want to.
I will say this. He is an immensely talented actor.
Yes.
He is a very complicated man. And yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Okay. And Kris
But
Kristofferson.
Oh my God. That's a guy, my mother and my sister they went to see A Star is Born multiple times in 1976. You know,
I was a little girl.
We
and
might have been conceived to A Star is Born.
Yeah, we had the record and we just played it on loop. And my mom,
so good.
our mom,
love him.
Sing all Barbara's
Yep.
parts. And
Why my mother went through some bad periods in her life, and there was a period where Why Me Lord was on constantly. It was like a life preserver for her. You know, I was a little kid. I couldn't quite wrap my head around why mom won't get out of bed. You know, the covers over her head all weekend.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so that song meant that to my mom. You know, my sister's burgeoning teenage sexuality was drawn to it.
Yeah.
When we were doing the movie, my wife said, because we were about to close the deal, and there was a magazine, No Depression magazine. He was on the cover. And Carrie, we didn't know him at that point. I had done a Western with him, so I had met him, but I didn't know him. My wife walks by and she looks at the photo, and Kris was 72 when that photo was taken. And she said, you know what? I don't really know what it is, but whatever it is, that man got a double scoop.
So cute.
So,
well, sorry.
No, well, yeah, he's a Rhodes Scholar, a Golden Gloves boxer, a war veteran, and yes. And, well, here's a story. And actually, she kind of looks like you as I think about it, this girl in this story. We were hanging out at a place called the Blue Post in Wilmington. We hit it off, and we hung out every night in my apartment. We would play songs to each other and smoke a joint and tell stories. And so I got all of the stories, and I sang him songs that I had written, and he would sing me these fucking songs that you knew and tell me where it came from, how he wrote it, whatnot. But one night we're at the Blue Post, and they had a great jukebox, and Reece Thompson, the kid that played his grandson, had never heard of Kris Kristofferson until we started doing the movie. And then he just absolutely idolized him. So I go to the jukebox, and I play Leopard Pillbox Hat by Dylan. And it comes on. We're sitting in the corner, and Kris goes, I remember the day Bob recorded this. I said, what?
Wow.
He was the janitor at Columbia Studios when Bob recorded. Mm-hmm. He said there was a buyout. No musicians or songwriters were allowed in the building. He said there was one because he was emptying the ashtrays and sweeping the floor. It was me. He said, so I would sit there and I would watch through the window. I'd watch Bob work. He goes, he would sit underneath this grand piano and he would write in a notebook. And every now and then he'd reach up over him and he'd pick out some notes. And then he'd go back to his notebook and he goes, I remember the day he wrote that one because the band came in at about 5 o'clock as I listened to him cut it. I thought, ooh, that's a special one. So it's the song that's playing as he's telling us the story.
Oh, cool.
Well, this girl went to UNC Wilmington, college girl, gorgeous, voluptuous. She walks up, she goes, excuse me, I don't, could I get your autograph? Kris like, yeah, sure. So he signs Bart napkin or something. And this is in the day of flip phones, cameras. And she goes, could we get a photo? Can I get a photo? Yeah. So she hands her photo out to somebody of hers, and she's all snuggling. I said she was holding him close like she was afraid he might catch a cold. And she goes, I just adore you. I love you. The Blade movies are my favorite movies ever.
Oh, no.
And Kris goes, oh, thank you. She goes, no, I love them. I love those movies. And Reece is sitting there. Reece goes, well, you should go play them on the jukebox. And she went, what? She goes, go play him on the jukebox. They got his greatest hits over there. She went, what? You're a singer? Oh my God.
Okay, so he spans, like, how many different generations know about this guy?
Well, I said, it was, my daughter had gotten on it because my daughter was a little girl when we did it. She was 9 when we shot. She was 11. It was when she was in high school years later. I forget what I was watching. It was one of the early films, and she went, oh, no, it was a photo. It was a photograph that she saw. And it was on my iPad. She went, ooh, who's that? I said, that's Kris. He went, that is Kris Kristofferson? I said, yeah. She went, oh my God. But I said, 3 generations of my family. Well, 4, counting my sister, my mother, my sister, my wife, and my daughter.
Ugh.
All crushes on Kris.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, the man's got a double scoop.
That's
yeah.
true. I know.
Exactly.
It lasts through the ages. He makes you doubt things. That's true.
Okay, and so I remember looking at you got T-Bone Burnett to do music producing on it or supervising.
We did.
That's
T-Bone,
huge.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't have gotten him 3 months later. It would have been impossible. But Stephen,
Can we say also he did "Oh Brother Where Art Thou"? We could
Yeah.
leave it at that, but he's a big deal.
Well, Crazy Heart happened while we were in post-production. Well, there's a story in and of that. And that's where T-Bone's rate went through the roof. But what happened is Steve Bruton, who Crazy Heart was loosely based on Bruton, and Bruton was the advisor for that film. He was Chris's lead guitar player through the whole time, and they were best friends. Well, Bruton was dying. He had terminal cancer. T-Bone had brought him out here. He was staying at T-Bone's place, his studio house, and he was going through alternative therapies. And he died there in T-Bone's place. But we got a phone call. Now, Travis Nicholson, who was working on the film with us behind the scenes, his dad, Gary Nicholson, started out in Texas with Kristofferson, with T-Bone. He's a musician-songwriter. So Travis has known Kris since the day he was born. So we all kind of had everything's connected, right? Well, Kris got the phone call that Bruton, it's happening. He's leaving us. So we arranged the schedule, and Travis got it because his dad knew also, because he was tight with Bruton. So we changed our schedule to allow Kris to get back here to LA to say goodbye. So Kris flies back in. He spent the afternoon with Stephen at T-Bone's house, and then Stephen died the next morning. There's a story in that T-Bone tells. He has a meditation bell. It's like this Asian, I forget what country it was from, but it's got this pure tone. It's an antique. I don't know how many, but he brought it out and showed it to me. No, because how we got him is, so Travis has already tried to get T-Bone to do our music. Kris comes back to say goodbye to Bruton. He says, I'm doing this movie about a musician. We're shooting in North Carolina. So T-Bone is getting it from every avenue that this project keeps coming across. And then Kris did something. He had never written original music before. He wrote that original song for our movie. So we needed somebody to cut it. So T-Bone agreed. But when we were over there at the place, we were in the place where Stephen died. The bedroom is right across the hall. He brought this meditation bell out. And he said Stephen, is like 4 a.m. or 5, somewhere in there, around the time the sun started to come up. Stephen's girlfriend was with him, and she heard the bell toll. And I think she said there were 3 tones, and she thought T-Bone was there. Like, oh, he's here awfully early. And then she rolls over, and Stephen's dead. So, as T-Bone said, this bell rang its tone the moment that Stephen left this room.
Wow.
So all that stuff kind of tied into, bringing us all together at the same place at the same time. And so I was there in Village Recorders, in the studio with T-Bone and Kris, and we hired a band. And so, yeah, it was. And then T-Bone, as we were mixing, we had cut and we were mixing. And when he got the phone call about Crazy Heart, the studio was moving up the Crazy Heart release date because he stepped out. He goes, I got to take this, guys. He steps out, then he steps back in and goes, we got to stop. I got to finish Crazy Heart. So, we got delayed. Yeah. We got delayed for about 3 weeks so that he could finish that movie. And then that movie, his rate skyrocketed. And,
God,
but yeah,
so lucky.
But having him and Kris, it was all the right spirits were supposed to all come together at that time,
That's awesome.
So
congratulations for finishing that. It is so hard to get a film up and running and made and produced and distributed. Congratulations. It's
Thank
huge.
you.
Yeah, and people can find it streaming now, right? I mean, we found it on Amazon?
Apple TV, I think.
Apple TV. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's streaming. Was it as part of the service, or because we were on Netflix for a few years, but it's been on there a while. I know it was on iTunes, but to purchase for like $6 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We paid for
But
it.
yeah, I'm not sure that it's on any streaming service free at the moment.
Yeah.
But I do know it's out there that you can buy it.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth
it's a
it.
good
You can
story.
stream it for $4. It's not a big if you don't want to buy it.
Yeah. I
So
love
everybody watch that.
yeah. I love the storytelling there. And I realize now, this late in my life, I've never been a big country music fan, but just doing this research with you and hearing
I
about
can't believe that. We were born in the same
I
family.
know.
We lived on a ranch. We were born on a ranch in Northern California. We grew up on Dolly Parton.
I know my mom's
What
our
happened?
mom's from Texas. Our dad, they both grew up in folk music in the 60s. So it was very, we get the guitar and play by the fire and harmonica and the whole thing. I don't know. I found rock. I guess I grew up liking that a bit more.
It's all good.
Yeah.
My mom is still a huge music fan. My first concert, I was the Callaway County Fairgrounds, 1968, right before I turned 4 years old, was the Porter Wagner show with Dolly Parton and Speck Rhodes.
Wow.
So
Nice.
Dolly had just started on Porter's show, and I was a little bitty boy. I was 4 years old, and it was the first time I'd seen in person people that I saw on TV. So my 4-year-old brain kind of put together like, oh my God, they're real. They're real people. But it was me when puberty hit, and I discovered Kiss was my gateway drug into punk and heavy metal because I love Kiss.
Oh yeah.
And so it wasn't until I moved to Chicago and I was learning to play, and WXRT, the cool rock station, played Steve Earle, Copperhead Road, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'm like, oh my God, this is a country song, but this is kind of metal. This is dark. And I was learning to play. And then my appreciation for Hank Williams, the first song I ever remember, I mean, I was a toddler, was I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry.
Aww.
Because both my grandmothers had Hank Williams records. They had different covers, but they were collections. And both of them had that song on it. And I can remember as a little boy hearing that and thinking, that man sounds so sad.
You connect. See, that's a testimony to your emotional depth at that age too.
Yeah. And Dolly Parton talks about that. They have the podcast Dolly Parton's America, and I think it's like maybe 10 parts or something. So it's something you can kind of binge and listen to. But she talks about these are stories from her people, in the mountains, and just the storytelling is so beautiful. And now I need to get into this. I'm feeling my country.
There's a lot of pap, there's a lot of slick stuff, and some of Dolly's stuff is Vegas Dolly,
right?
But you listen, she did 3 bluegrass records about 15-20 years ago. The first one's called The Grass Is Blue, and she does bluegrass versions of like Stairway to Heaven, but there's some songs. There's a song called Down from Dover. I dare you listen to that song and not get emotionally wrenched.
Wow.
Down from Dover by Dolly Parton. And then again, you find those nuggets. Look for the Townes Van Zandt, who was a great writer. Some of the records I don't care for. I don't care for the production, but the songs are Dylan level good. Steve Earle is my favorite ever. So yeah, if you dig, there's some great music. I mean, it grew out of folk music and country music are first cousins.
Yeah.
There are a lot of similarities in that.
And rock, taking the old Delta blues and then the Led Zeppelins, and it all ties together.
Grew out of blues. Country is just blues. It's American blues music combined with Scots-Irish folk music. And hence you got country music.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of all of this, your band, are you guys playing? What's the name of your band and what's happening with that?
We are Sacred Cowboys. We were a band. We started back in the aughts, kind of evolved out of Deadwood. I met this musician who was working in the background, who was a musician who played pedal steel, Mike Johnstone. And season 2 of Deadwood, I'd been playing with some guys. We got together. It was a dad band. of sorts. It started my 40th birthday party. We had rented the Cat Club. So we decided we're going to play. So we put a 45-minute set together of cover songs. And like, there was something like, oh, there's something here. Like and the guys were musicians far more than me. So we'd kind of kept it up. But it was all rock music and mostly hard rock. And then we had the House of Blues for the season 2 wrap of Deadwood. And the producer said, hey, if you want to bring your band, if you guys want to play some. Well, I met Mike and I knew he played pedal steel and I wanted to do some country music because it's apropos for Deadwood.
Sure.
So I went to Mike and then I went and got Ralph Stevens, who used to be my neighbor, who used to play piano for Jackie DeShannon.
Wow.
Mike and Ralph are both a generation older than me. That's kind of how it evolved. And we had that group of personalities in a room. There was that spark. I felt it from the moment we started playing. And not everybody, it's not like everybody's best friends in that band, but that combination of sensibilities, so we became a band. We played quite a bit.
Wow.
And then we ended up, I had a problem when Deadwood stopped. It was always promoted like the guy from Deadwood. So people would come out, it's country rock music with the guy from Deadwood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after the show was over, I felt like a loser. Like I believed in the band. Like whatever brings people through the door, I know this band is going to knock them on their socks. But to go out and do promotion and shit, like the show's over.
Yeah.
So I was busy. We got booked to do Stagecoach. Word kind of spread. And I love telling this story. The band that opened it, they played before us on the Palomino stage. I don't know whatever happened to those guys, the Zach Brown band.
Oh no.
Yeah, we played the Palomino stage at 3 on that Saturday at Stagecoach 09. The response was phenomenal. And we were at the point of like, okay, we got to do this, which means get in the white van and tour. I could not afford to do it. We were in production on Bloodworth at that point, and I had to give myself the Bloodworth. So I kind of mothballed the band, like right when the momentum is building up for us, and I couldn't do it. So I missed it like crazy. And we decided when the Deadwood movie came around, we're like, fuck it. Let's all get back together and see if we can still play.
Nice.
So we have tracked new music. We have 2 videos that I am over the moon about how good they were. I conceived them, and then I brought in these artists to do them. And then Peter is a Oscar-nominated filmmaker, my lead guitar player.
Wow.
He made these things. I cannot wait to share them. We're just trying to find the right time and the right way we can distribute them. So we've had a couple of songs used. Stuff's been used in films. We used the closing credits song of Bloodworth is Sacred Cowboys.
Okay.
Tell Me Your Secret. We cut that with T-Bone remixed the version that I had already cut. But yeah, that closing credits song in Bloodworth is Sacred Cowboys.
That's so.
All the songs are great.
Was that also you guys with that 2-part harmony, just the a cappella, the 2 guys singing in Bloodworth?
Oh, that is Tim O'Brien and Daryl. Escapes my no, it's not us.
Yeah, that was Tingles too. That was an amazing song.
And Gasoline and Matches. I sang that. I sing sometimes and was with the bands, and we did a cover of that too. Beautiful song.
Well, I knew with that we couldn't do the storm. Like we could not afford to do a tornado. In the book, it's a blizzard. Well, we knew that's out. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tornado. So we set up, that it's blowing in. Like there's a hurricane that's sending weather up that's kind of seeded earlier in the movie that bad weather's coming their way. Wow. But we couldn't afford to really properly film the damage of it hitting the house. So I'm the one that came. I said, how about if we just use music? If we just use this Heart of Gold. It's a Hank Williams recorded it. It's a Hank Williams song. Daryl Scott and Tim O'Brien. And I just, that's one of my favorite moments in the movie because you just have these 2 incredible voices. Thank you for noticing that. Makes me happy that you picked up on it like that.
It was gorgeous. Yeah. So much art in that too. And I was going to say, this sounds kind of kooky, but going back to Deadwood and your scene after the fight and sitting there not able to talk and wondering if you're okay. It did have this kind of Rodin thinker sculpture kind of, just the artistry. You pull it off really well. So good job.
Thank you. Well, I would like to say that was the reason I did it. It was more like I'm trying to hide my balls from the camera.
He had a big forward lean.
That's so profound.
Now, what does your wife think of any love scenes and stuff like that? I'm always so curious about this with acting.
Yeah, I mean, she's okay with it. She never had a problem. There was one movie I did that there was an actress I was working with that we had intimate scenes, and there was kind of a spark. Like if we were both single people, we probably would have dated. My wife could smell that on me a mile away.
That's it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And that's been the only time where she was like, But all the other times, there was one, and it's a great little small film that the lead guitar player in my band made it called Dunsmore, a little low budget film. And I had, multiple full on nude sex scenes in it. And the actress that was playing, the younger actress who was in it, we hit it off, and my wife was friends with her, and because she's young and pretty, and and Carrie had no, again, she can smell a boner on me from a mile away. So there's no use to me ever even trying to pretend to hide it. So,
can we quote you on that? Can that be the lead of our
you can smell
episode?
a boner a mile. Oh, I'm writing it down.
Oh my goodness.
The one on me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only his. It's specific.
Yeah. Do you want to end with something ridiculous and do the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon to...
We came up with a game idea. So
now, she has always been a super fan of Kris.
I love Coldplay. This is like talking about love stories and heartbreak and all this, right? I went through a big breakup with my husband. Sounds like you guys with Carrie, that you had to break up and get back together and you finally ended up together. Well, that was us. And Coldplay got me through. So I transferred all those love feelings onto Chris Martin because he and my husband look a lot alike.
It's strange.
Talk about some Freudian stuff. But so I still love Chris Martin. Can't help myself. He married Gwyneth Paltrow. So I said, instead of the Kevin Bacon game, let's play with Earl Brown. We'll play the Gwyneth Paltrow game or whatever you want to call it. So can you connect yourself through your movies, your works, back to, Chris Martin or Gwyneth Paltrow?
Well, I saw also in your email, didn't I see Adam Sandler on there too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was my guy.
And yeah.
That was your guy? Well, I can connect all of them together.
No.
Oh.
Well, I can connect to Gwyneth. What was her cousin? I was in a Chekhov class out here in LA in 1994 with her first cousin. And then we used to go out to Bruce and her parents' house. Gwyneth still lived there. We had class at their house a few times. I never met Gwen.
That's Bruce Dern and her mom.
Dannon, right?
No, Bruce Paltrow. Bruce Paltrow was her father.
Oh God.
Was Blythe her mom? Is what?
Yeah,
yes,
it's Danner.
That's what. Okay.
Yeah. And then her cousin. She was in a few movies, and she had a TV show. Name escapes me at the moment. But the Adam Sandler and Chris Martin, when Judd Apatow decided he was going to get back into doing stand-up, he did shows over at that theater down by the mall over in Beverly Hills.
We were there. Flappers?
No.
No.
Beverly
It's a
Hills?
theater. Yeah, it's in Beverly Hills.
Oh.
What's the big indoor mall in Beverly Center?
Oh.
There's a theater just like a block away. Oh God, what's the name of it?
Oh, on West 3rd?
Largo.
Oh, Largo at the Cornet, yeah.
Largo, Cornet, yes. So I went to see one of Judge, I want to say it was the second night.
Wow. He's good. I saw him at Kaboo, and it was great.
Well, he had special guests that were going to pop in, and one of them was Adam Sandler.
That's right.
Adam was there. So he brought Adam out to do a bit. And then he goes, I got a buddy in the audience. Hey, Chris, come up here. sitting right in front of me was Chris Martin.
Ah.
He brings Chris up on stage to improvise a song. And Chris, you could tell this wasn't a plant. Chris did not want to get up. And Joe's like, come on up here, come on. And so he gets at the piano and he improvises a song about how uncomfortable he is. And he makes the audience laugh. And Apatow, he finishes and Apatow walks out and he goes, all right, you look like Chris Martin. You play music like Chris Martin. I don't look like that. I can't play music like that. But you're funny? You're funny? You got the audience laughing? I'm the fucking funny guy. Get off my stage.
He's good. He's so
the night
cute.
at the Largo that included Adam Sandler and Chris Martin.
That's amazing.
You did it.
Largo.
You did it. Very
You
good.
did it.
And
You-
comedy, bringing it all back around.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Mhm.
You're amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Well, thank you.
This has been so fun. Do we have any more questions?
We
that
have
had
more
to-
questions that I didn't. I mean, I hate to.
I know we're being selfish with his time, but I know
Well,
we
you're gonna
promised a
cut a bunch
few.
of shit out of this anyway, so
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a little editing on mostly me and weird questions I asked you. Well,
I feel like we
We
asked
did
a lot.
pretty
Oh, I
much
wanted to know
everything.
about your fight scene with Joaquin Phoenix.
oh.
That was crazy too. This
and
is
P.T.
in-
Anderson, because I'm a fan of his, and if you had a chance
Well,
to read him.
I was a fan also. I mean, again, because I knew Riley, so I'd seen since Hard Eight, because Riley was in it, and those two guys were best buds. And I actually met Paul. This was Tom Petty and Steve Earle playing at the Santa Barbara Bowl, and John and Paul were there. And they were sitting right behind us. So that was John had introduced me to him, but I mean I just knew him. This was after Boogie Nights. So with The Master, I knew that movie was being made because they were so super secretive about it because they were afraid of Scientology mutzing with them, you know. So I got a call from my agent, and he said, "Are you comfortable fighting?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, but really fighting, not stage fighting. I
Oh
said,
yeah, you guys were.
It looks so.
There was
Yeah.
no stunts, right?
No, it was just us. And it's all in one take.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, I actually like hitting people. I don't like getting hit that much, but I'm not real quick. So, you know, it's a trade-off. So I usually avoid it, but yeah, I'm fine fighting. And he said, well, there's this Paul Thomas Anderson film, Cassandra Has Called, and they want somebody that can go toe-to-toe with Joaquin Phoenix, because Joaquin he can't do stunts. He gets so into the moment. So they need an actor who, and I said, yeah, sure. So I expected Paul, because he's so cinematic, I expected him to be one of these guys that's got every shot and every cut in his head. If, you know, I figured storyboarded, because there are guys that are so visual, they know every place they want to take it. So I met him the day before we shot, when I had makeup confab and stuff. And I went in and said hello. We were in the department store. They were shooting at that location. Super nice guy, and introduced me to Joaquin. And Joaquin didn't, you know, he called himself Joaquin. He wasn't one of these, you got to call me by my
Val
character.
Kilmer, Jim Morrison, yes.
Yeah, yes. He wasn't like that, but he stayed in that headspace the whole time. And introduced. He goes, yeah, thanks for coming out. Now, did they tell you when we do this, are you comfortable if you hit me? Are you comfortable if you hit me? I said, yeah, I was told, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, yeah, because yeah, so just yeah. He starts to walk away and turns. Goes, what about if I hit you? If I hit you, are you okay if I hit you? I said, yeah, man, we'll just work it out, whatever, sure. So the next day we get there, and Paul, we're in costume, and we were rehearsing. The whole crew's there, and it was a scene. It was like 2 pages of dialogue. Going back to Deadwood, like the post-fight scene, it was dialogue, and I was a businessman. I was there to get my portrait taken, but I thought maybe I could get a print for my wife. She'd probably like that. So I was supposed to be this jovial, you know, and so we're reading it, and Paul walks up and he goes, this is not good. This is really not good, which is the first fucking thing you want to hear your director say.
Yeah.
And he says, it's the writing. It's the writing. I'm too on the nose. It's too obvious. Can you improvise? To me, and I said, yeah. He goes, are you fine with improv? I said, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, okay, close the set. Everybody off. Everybody off. Close it out. So set's clear. All right, let's see what happens. Let's see. So we start kind of blocking through it, and we lead up. And the first time he grabs me by the throat, and I punch him, and but I knew like I can't fully hit him because I'll knock his ass out because I got a clean shot right to the side of the head. So I was trying to like loosen the punch. Well, we went through it a few times that we would get to that crescendo, and I noticed Paul like calling people over, department heads, and at one point he goes, "Look, we're gonna turn the camera on. Just turn it on. We'll tail slate. Turn it on. Okay, let's just do one. Let's just do one." So he backs off. We did it 6 times, 6 takes. There's no cuts. It's that it stays on Joaquin. There's a lot of headspace in there in the frame. You don't see me at first. You hear me, but you don't see me, which brings this tension, and you have him on this side of the frame, butts in with the camera. And then as he moves over toward me, the camera pans back or pulls back some and trucks with him. And then you got a 2-shot. Most of that interaction happens with a 2-shot. And then I knock the shit out of him. And I shove him out of frame. So you get the empty frame. And then Paul moves back. And then we both enter. And then, no cuts.
Someone threw a chair at one point, too.
I threw, yeah. In that take, I flipped there's a love seat. And I flip it as he's throwing glass at me. Because we had breakaway glass. We knew we had that was available to us. And so every single review picked out that scene, talk about the tension of the scene. And I went back to it time and again of like how Paul and his DP got that. They got it with their framing, they got it with their sound mix, but he trusted. He knew that he had it in one take.
That's crazy.
And he knew that he didn't need cutaways.
And it was kind of cool when
did they dolly it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know all the terminology because I'm not in the biz, but they dollied it. And then you lose Joaquin behind that column and then he comes out, which was so realistic. It was just like you knew it was a real scene. It was great.
Yes, it was. It was on a dolly. I want to say it was tracked, that we had track. But yeah, it did dolly. It moved over when he walked over. He panned back a little bit to open the frame up, and he moved with him, which sets us in a 2-shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fight starts happening, and then the frame just centers us. It moves back over and centers us as I flip the couch over, and I'm chasing him, and he's throwing containers at me.
Wow.
And then as he starts, the camera then follows him past that post, and then he walks out of frame.
By the way, that's another sorry, I got excited though with your 6 Degrees with Adam Sandler. You got P.T. Anderson and Punch Drunk Love right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. But that was an amazing scene. That was hugely standout in that film.
Yeah. And again, I've watched it countless. I mean, Paul may have conceived of it as a 1. He never, ever said that. And he wasn't there setting up, multiple shots. He just trusted the frame. And he was able to, so much of it is the space and stuff that he allows in the frame that builds up that sense of tension. I mean, the acting was there. That was there. But we weren't the only things that made it work.
What building was it? Was it downtown LA?
Downtown, it was an old abandoned apartment store that the first floor was now like a sandwich shop or whatnot. The second floor was still there, just abandoned.
Crazy.
They just had to press it,
Wow.
So I'm not sure what it was like it was some brand company that knew, what it had once been. But yeah, it was downtown LA.
Wow. My friend worked on Punch Drunk Love. He worked on that and he said that P.T. Anderson would show up and sometimes just like that fish tank is amazing. And they would just throw away the script and somehow the story would get created around something in the moment. So I wonder if he was a bit like that, which is so cool with these big budget films that you would just.
I've loved everything. I did not care for the what was the based on that book? No, the one based on the book.
He had, let's see, Boogie
Inherent
Nights.
Vice.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't my favorite either.
I didn't care. I did like one of the best sex scenes ever filmed. All you see is her face. It's a long scene. It's a great you don't see anything really, but it works. That was the only part of the film. I didn't care much for the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I just rewatched Magnolia and Boogie Nights.
Good.
Too long since quarantines happened.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Lends a lot of time for that. That's good.
Alfred Molina, still my favorite. Jesse's Girl. All right.
Yeah.
But we want to end on you because let's see, let's find a good ending.
Well, you've mentioned Dad Band earlier.
Yes.
Let's encourage everybody. We're trying to make something more of Dad Band. In an ideal world, we could do 10 half-hour episodes that tell a whole story because I've got it all laid out. I'm writing a feature version also. But we made that with Cantrell and my buddy Ted Kamp, who plays the keyboard player in the band. He and I came up with, he had the idea for the song. And then I said, well, if we're going to do a song and a video, we should make a short film. So that's how it evolved. We've got 1.1 million views on YouTube. Yeah.
Great.
And the response has been phenomenal. So we've only done the one. We want to do more, but we're not going to do it. We got to have a budget. We got to get paid. I'm not going to do it for free.
Right.
So yeah, Dad Band on YouTube. Dad Band.
Pretty
On YouTube
self-explanatory.
with W. Earl Brown. Do you want to give us a little premise of that or just go look it up?
I can give you a one-sentence premise. It is about the formation and dissolution of a suburban dad band on a single Saturday afternoon.
I love it.
Oh,
It's like the minivan commercial that was all the rage for a while. Did you see that one?
Which one?
Oh, it was the suburban couple rocking the minivan. It was right when I was in my minivan phase. So I was feeling the vibe, but I'll look it up. We'll send it to you.
okay. Dad Band. Everybody look that up.
Yep. Very good.
I want to make more.
You guys look up W. Earl Brown on IMDb and just look at the plethora of movies and TV and your body of work. I mean, we're going back to Backdraft to current day. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what a get. We're so honored that you came on our show and couldn't be happier to
Thank
meet
you.
you and talk with you.
All right. It's been fun.
Yay. Thank
Love
you
you
so
much.
much. Bye. Okay, folks, there you have it. That wraps up our interview.
That was so cool.
With W. Earl Brown. Weens,
Yes.
how'd you feel about the whole thing?
I just think he's a great guy. I think he's interesting, and God, there's so many cool stories. I learned a lot, and I'm so happy to have met him so many years ago, and I'm very excited that he came on the podcast.
That's right. So you guys check him out at Dad Band on YouTube. Just look for that. Also, keep an eye on this guy because he's got a big upcoming project that's going to hit, I don't know when, but he's starting filming December through the spring.
It's a big deal, and we saw a little info on the internet that I don't know if it's leaked or not, but yeah, it's big stuff.
Yeah, so keep your eye out on him. Follow him on all his social media. I think he's real findable on Instagram, and I think he's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, W. Earl Brown. Thank you for listening, and please follow us to mouseandweens.com. We are also over on Patreon. Mouse and Weens is the / patreon.com/mouseandweens. And we want to thank our other patrons. We love you guys. We really appreciate your support, and it really does keep us motivated. And thank you for parting with your $5 a month. You are on your way to getting your free t-shirt if you listen for 4 months. We send you a t-shirt. We send you a swag bag of welcome gifts. We make you a song, all sorts of fun things. So do find us over on Patreon. While we're talking about it, let's look up W. Earl Brown on Cameo as well, and maybe he'll do his any special requests that you have. He will do private special request audios and videos for you guys. So go check that out on Cameo. Anything else, Weens?
I just thank you very much. We're happy to be here, and please come back, y'all.
That's right. Subscribe. Tell your friends. We love you. Bye.
It's those blue eyes that done me